Hi and welcome. I'm Dr. D. This is my first official Ask Dr. D video, and I am excited. As a way to reach and help more people, I've wanted to launch this platform for quite some time, but like everything else in life, it just got getting pushed down my proverbial to-do list. And no doubt you guys can relate to that as well. However, recently I hired this young whippersnapper who's got great education experience to help me launch this platform. And not only am I excited, I feel equally lucky that I found her. So each month, once or twice a month, which really depends, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to answer your questions about relationships and dating. And you can post questions on the Instagram page or shoot me a DM or an email and ask me any question you might have about relationships and dating. Now, because of time purposes, I may not be able to answer your specific question on this specific platform. However, I want you to be rest assured that I will answer your question in the same way how you reached out to me. So just in case, like I said, it doesn't reach here, I will for sure circle back around and answer your question. Now, before I get to the few questions I'm going to talk about today, there's just a quick disclaimer that this is not therapy, and on this platform, I'm just offering some general information based on my 16 years of personal and professional experience. And I'm hoping that even if you're not the person writing in, that you're able to get something out of it and answer some questions that you might have. So let's get started. Today, I'm going to be answering 3 questions. The first question is, what are some good questions to ask when you first start dating somebody? Which is a great question. Another great question is how to improve the communication in a relationship that where a couple is struggling, and because of their communication problems, they're arguing and they have a lot of misunderstandings. And third, how do you know when to move on when each person cares about the other person, but the compatibility factor now becomes an issue? And how do you know when to go in a different direction? So these are all 3 really great questions. And I want to go back to the very first question, which is, what are some good questions to ask when you first start dating somebody? Now, I know a lot of people struggle because they don't really know what to say. They don't really know, like what kind of questions to ask, or do they start asking the questions? But when I'm helping people who are out there dating, I suggest to them that, first of all, you want to show up curious and interested. Because when you're curious and you're interested, you're really curious about that person and interested in what they have to say. So you can start off with questions such as maybe some family or educational background, or where they're from, or friends, or what they like to do for fun outside of work. You can also ask them about hobbies that they might have, what they like to do outside of work on their downtime, or some of the things they did when they were growing up with their family or their friends, or some experiences in college. So those are lots of things you can also start with. But then when I really started to think about this question, I thought, this really is a very great question considering the times, right? Because now we're returning to the world, right? We're kind of like in that post-COVID, we're, well, almost at the end of it, or some semblance of that. And people are going out and they're dating, they're meeting in real time or in real life, and they really want to know, like, what can they say? But I think that this is a great topic to bring up. Not so much like, you vaccinated or do you have COVID, but, how has COVID changed your life? And has it changed your life? And will you make any changes when we start going back to work and we start getting back into the world in a way that we used to not really even think anything about, right? Has COVID impacted you or your family, or has it been a silver lining for you, or has it been something negative for yourself? Or, what will you take away from COVID? Will you live your life differently? Will you go back to living the life that you had before? Will you re-examine your life differently in the way that you manage your time? My experience has been that COVID has really been a game changer for people in many, many ways. And the things that maybe they were doing before and how they spent their time, maybe they don't want to do that anymore. Maybe they want to do more of that. And I think this is a really great question to ask. And I think that, starting off with some foundational things and maybe being more specific would be helpful. And for the person that wrote in, I hope that was helpful for you as well, and others that might have the same question. The next question was posed to me was about how to improve communication so that there's more understanding and less arguments. And, most couples that come to me, the main thing that they say is that we don't communicate. Now, they do communicate, but not in really healthy ways. And and so they complain a lot about arguments and circular conversations, and they don't really know how to communicate. But what I like to talk to them about and talk to that person who wrote into me is that I see it a little bit different than that. I mean, there are communication challenges that you say that you're having in your relationship, but it really goes a little bit beyond, like before that. So when people are in relationships, oftentimes where they argue is because they ask their partner three things, not necessarily directly or verbally, but they're thinking these things. You know, can I rely on you? Are you available? Do you have my back? Right? And if they can't answer yes to those questions, then they feel they're not supported. They don't. They're not listened to. They're not seen, heard, or validated. And those things become the foundation of that relationship. And when you don't have that, then you start to argue. And so when people are arguing, the reason why they're arguing is they have this big disconnect. They feel disconnected from their partner. They feel not attached to their partner. And then they start to argue because it still goes back to those three questions. Can I rely on you? Are you available? Do you have my back? And so people start to argue over these things, right? Could be money, could be sex, it could be anything. But what the really important thing to do is to go back and to create what I call like that safe space, that safe space for couples where they feel comfortable talking about anything. And then when you move them into that safe space, then they feel like they can rely on their partner, they have their back, and that they're available. And when they feel that, then they feel listened to, heard, seen, validated, supported. And because of that, they can communicate even better. And so when you create that safe space, you give them the tools to move into that place so they can have different and healthier conversations. And then another way to communicate differently is to, ask like for a soft startup. John Gottman, he's the guru, and this is one of his things he's always talking. He talks a lot about in his website and his books. Is like the soft startup is, can I talk to you about whatever, fill in the blank, and if not, when. And so by giving the other person the option to either talk then if they're ready to, or another time, when they if they decide on another time, or even if they decide at that moment, it's agreed upon that they're both in a good space to start talking about something. So both people come to that emotionally available to have that conversation. And then once they're in that safe space, they can start to talk about things. And then when things get kind of heated, they have a plan to say, okay, maybe let's take a time out. The goal then is still to go back to those three questions. And the goal becomes to create that strong foundation of trust and security, right? And relying on your partner, feeling validated, heard, seen, and understood, and listened to. Because we can all admit that when we listen, most people don't listen to listen, they listen to respond. And then when someone's talking, they're waiting for their partner to stop talking so they can say what they're going to say. And once again, they still don't feel heard or listened to or seen. So for that person who wrote in, I hope that, and those who are struggling in relationships, I hope that information will help you to communicate better. And lastly, someone wrote in and wanted to know, how do you know if, even though two people care about one another, how do you start to realize that maybe even though you do, that the compatibility isn't there anymore? And how do you know when it's right to go to end that relationship because you find that you're going in different directions? And I think that's also an equally great question, in that sometimes, we can really love somebody and we can really care about them, but sometimes it's just not enough. Sometimes we outgrow relationships. And when I hear someone ask that question, or they're contemplating that in a relationship, some things come to mind. And some of the things that come to mind are, were you compatible before and now you're not? Was it something that maybe you were ignoring and now you're not? I mean, what's changed for you? Are you seeking something different in life? Do you find that you want different experiences and that person you no longer find is compatible? Because I'm always interested into why you're not compatible now as opposed to another time. And if you're questioning the relationship and you find that maybe you are starting to go in different directions, is there anything that can be salvaged in that relationship? Meaning, is there enough compatibility to salvage it, and maybe have something like a long distance relationship if you were going after physical different directions, physically going to live different places, or maybe you just are finding yourself in a different direction where you are in your life, and because of that, you're starting to kind of part ways. And so I think that asking yourself where you are and where you want to be, and is this person like the most compatible person for you? And if not, why not? Another important thing to ask, or maybe even to move into, is to really be honest. I think that sometimes people don't want to be really honest because they're afraid they're going to hurt that person. And I'm not saying that they're not going to hurt that person, but the way in which you talk about that and you address that with your partner with kindness and compassion can lessen the hurt, right? Or maybe you both are in the same place. I don't know. But I think that you have to be honest, because if not, then you're preventing you from living the life that you want to live, and you're also preventing the partner from living the life that maybe he or she wants to live as well, right? So honesty really is really important. And there are just healthy ways in which to go about sharing how you feel and where you are in your life, being honest, but also being, like I said, with kindness and compassion. So that's it. I hope that I was able to help the people that wrote in, and I hope that if anyone out there watching this video has a similar question, I hope that I was helpful for you as well. Like I said before, you can always DM me or find me on Instagram at Dr. K. Davin. You can shoot me an email at hello@kristendavin.com. I'd be happy to post, answer your question, like I said, either on this video platform or personally respond to you so that you can get that question answered. And I really look forward to seeing people and hearing from you and wanting just to help more people so that that everybody can build healthier and more sustainable relationships. And look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.